we're way farther west than we ever intended being because we were racing the wind.
Hi, everyone. I had the privilege to spend an hour earlier this week catching up with Greg Zweber, who's been featured on this podcast twice already this year. And if you missed any of the previous episodes featuring Greg, he ditched the rat race and burned the corporate ladder. And I'm chronicling significant portions of his professional gap year as he RVs around the country with his wife and father-in-law. This conversation this week was fascinating, and my intent was to share the interview today. Unfortunately, we had a spotty connection that lowered the quality of the recording. So it's just mostly me, and I'll be sharing portions of the conversation with Greg and also highlighting some of the golden nuggets and lessons from the conversation. I'll share the insights when we come back. You are listening to the Work Life Eubiosis podcast with your host, Charleston Edwards. If this is your first time here, welcome. My goal is simple: to eradicate burnout and to bring harmony, purpose, and balance to this world, starting with the family. My hope is that this show and the story shared will provide encouragement and ideas that will be valuable to you on your journey to work-life freedom. So let's dive in to today's episode. For those of you who are wondering, Greg is currently in Arizona outside the Cascade Mountains, which is much further west than he had planned. Greg and his family are continuing to stop at national and state parks and have spent significant time in Texas over the last month. However, with the torrential weather system that came through our country in early March, Greg and his family had to race the wind and head west. I don't know if anyone experienced or saw the videos, especially in Texas, of the wind blowing over tractor trailers. This was the scene that Greg was trying to avoid, and they did avoid it. They beat the wind and now are trekking through Arizona and slowly heading north towards Utah and Colorado. Racing the wind is typically a losing battle. Some people chase the wind and also lose. In fact, I've frequently quoted the book of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon is comparing our activities on earth to chasing the wind. One of my favorite quotes from this book is this one. Quote, "Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind." Greg will continue to be featured on this podcast because he's not chasing the wind. He is racing the wind. He's going in the opposite direction, and he is loving it. Greg sold his house and belongings and gave up his title and his career. His priority is solely on family, seeing this country, and his health. Racing the wind means that he is holding his plans loosely and he's going with the flow. This is part of the adventure of touring this country with a limited amount of restrictions of having to go here and having to go there. In a world where most of us are living on the 9-to-5 world clock, I'm thrilled that we are living somewhat vicariously through Greg's journey. As mentioned at the top of the show, our recording this week was pretty low quality, so I wanted to share some of Greg's insights, quotes, and lessons. So here are a few takeaways from the conversation. Number one, Greg is learning all over again. He's embracing history, nature, geography of this country, places that he's never been to. He's capturing and taking in the enormousness of God's creation. He's meeting new people, having wonderful conversations. Those who are also racing the wind and embracing the true diversity of this land. One of Greg's quotes, He says, everyone has some enduring qualities. You just have to find it in them. This comment came after he shared some of his experiences along the southern border of this country. It's one thing to watch the news, but it's completely different to be on the border. Next, Greg talked about his own humility and privilege for what he is getting to do during this season of life. Not everyone is able to do this type of adventure, and he's not taking any aspect of this trip for granted. However, he will be the first to say to not wait on something that is possible today. And I concur with that. Greg is still not thinking about what's next after 2025. He's not limiting this gap year to just 1 year quite yet. However, he has started a crazy idea journal. I have no idea what's in it, but that's probably on purpose so I don't accidentally give away the next $1 million idea to you all. Greg and his family are still living minimally, cooking the majority of their own meals. Their biggest expense is gas money. In fact, Greg is keeping the door open of never owning a home again. It's still in the air, but believe me, once I know the decision, I look forward to sharing it here on this podcast. Greg's intentional journey for the highway is symbolic of his intentional journey for his health. For the last year, Greg has cleaned up his diet. This has been a parallel path to stepping away from his career. He's acknowledged that it's taken a little bit to find a solid routine in this adventure and on the road, but he still prioritizes his morning routine, getting in exercise, grounding, breathing exercises, and his special morning cocktail of turmeric, cinnamon, ginger, and cayenne pepper. He even takes shots of olive oil every morning and does cold showers when cold plunging is not possible. And when I asked him about what regimen he couldn't live without, he quickly said, it's the 8-minute breathing exercise and grounding right after he wakes up. The conversation then pivoted back to the bigger picture of what Greg is symbolizing. With that, I want to share the very end of our conversation here when I asked him to describe the experience of going from the rat race to running fearlessly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One, I'm not doing this to be an inspiration to anybody, but I appreciate that if somebody takes a small piece of it. But, I've shared this with you before, and maybe we talked about it last time. So I have 2 tattoos. One on my left arm is the phrase that I love, I try to embrace, I try to live by. It's live simply, love generously, care deeply, speak kindly, and leave the rest to God. And if you think about all the stuff that we've been talking about here and leaving the rat race and prioritizing, your own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health and relationships and things like that. And that's something that'll never change, right? Like, so we've been working on our relationship, whether that's Nicole and I or my father-in-law and I and things like that. And there's different challenges with that and being in such proximity. But it's really embracing, if you literally think about that, if you live simply, which I did before, I think, I've never owned a new car, we had a nice house, but, I'm not going to go buy a mansion and things like that. If you live simply, love generously, care deeply, especially about those around you, but even those who you don't know, live simply, love generously, care deeply, speak kindly, which seems like an aberration now with everything going on, especially political, and then literally just leave the rest to God. It can be that simple if you do those 5 things. And I try to remind myself of that every day. And again, that doesn't eliminate the need for finances or whatever. I don't want to oversimplify this and have, I've had one of my sisters say to me, well, of course you can do this. You had great jobs and you're making big money or whatever. I don't know that the money matters. What somebody's making. I think it's just a commitment to stop buying stuff. If everybody, it's an American thing too, let's embrace it. I need stuff because my neighbor has it, or, nobody needs stuff. Nobody remembers stuff. Things you give your kids for Christmas or their birthday, they're not going to remember that unless it was like a special blanket or doll or something like that. You know what they're going to remember? When you took them to the state park or took that trip to Disney or went to grandma's house every Sunday after church. You know, that's the stuff, the things, the experiences that kids and people are going to remember. Nobody's going to remember what car you owned in 2025 when you're 70 years old. Who gives a rip? So I'm my babbling. I'm forgetting the question, but it's just been, if I continue to embrace what I have tattooed on my left arm, life becomes much, much simpler and much, much more enjoyable and much less stressful. Just doing those 5 things.
Greg, that's a mic drop. It's exactly why I asked you that and set you up so everyone listening could hear your heart, and your perspective on life. And, there's nothing else here. I think I want to end the show with one question to make everyone jealous. What are you doing for the rest of today?
I don't know. I can tell you the plan was yesterday, the day before, as we were planning out the next 2 or 3 days before we leave for Phoenix. We knew we wanted to go down to Mexico. So I'm going to butcher this name. I think it's Chiricahua, and it's called National Monument rather than a national park. That's been an interesting learning curve about why some are parks, because it's an act of Congress versus whatever. It's still a beautiful area, but we are going to go either today or tomorrow to Chiricahua National Monument, which is about an hour from here. It's supposed to be beautiful. For those that have been in the Badlands of South Dakota, it's indescribable. Google it if you've never been there. How the different layers of the rock, and when the sun hits it. If you've never been there, I encourage you to go. If you can't go there, Google it and look at the images. It's beautiful. But anyways, Chiricahua is supposed to be somewhat like that, but also the rocks are supposed to form what look like a bunch of totem poles, hundreds of feet tall, with that same effect of some of the different things. So, anyways, it is going to be cool today, which wouldn't matter, but it also is going to be another day of like 45-mile-an-hour gusts, and we want to do some hiking. So today, now that you've asked me that, I think I'm going to finally go get a haircut. I don't think I've ever gone 2.5 months in my life without a haircut. So I have it tucked in, but I'm starting to get the hockey hair on the sides and the back. So my day today, maybe run into the town, which is like 15 miles away, and going to get a haircut. And that might be all I accomplish all day, and that's awesome.
That is awesome. Greg, thank you for being an inspiration. You're exactly what I needed today, and I always love our conversations and catching up. So thank you.
Likewise. Great talking with you, man.
Thank you for listening to the Work-Life Eubiosis podcast, part of the work-life resources created by Own Your 5 to 9. I hope that you have found encouragement and a few ideas to strengthen your journey to purpose, freedom, and balance. Have you overcome burnout and found a new way of life? Millions around the globe are still at the risk of burnout and losing it all. And your story may be the one that sparks not only a dream, but action. Visit ownyour5to9.com for more information and submit your story. While you're there, join the Work-Life Eubiosis newsletter and receive additional resources weekly right to your inbox. If you enjoy this podcast, take time to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Share it with a friend or loved one. Remember, the most important organization in the world is the family. Let's do our part to strengthen it. Thank you for listening.